want to build relationships with investors, the first thing is do your homework. Pay them the respect of actually checking out who they are and whether they actually do invest in your sector or your stage and or geography. You need to be careful and say, should I be wasting that person's time as well as my own? Am I talking to the right person?
Invest in creating relationships with the type of investors you'd like to have. It takes a long time to create trust. It's a big deal. So they have to trust you as a human, not just as an entrepreneur.
Hello, and thank you all for joining us this evening for this inaugural AwakenHub event, Fundraising Tips for Founders. My name is Claire McGee, and on behalf of our team, Sinead Crowley, Denise McQuaid, Mary McCarthy and Mary McKenna and myself, we're delighted to have such a diverse audience in attendance, and you're all very, very welcome. So we have an exciting hour ahead, and we're going to open up with a conversation between Mary Carty and Anne Ravanova. So now I'm going to pass you over to Mary Carty, who will open up with a conversation with Anne Ravanova.
Okay, so for people who don't know Anne, Anne is one of those trailblazer, cheerleader people who, no matter what you say to Anne or you go to her with the crazy idea, her very first answer will always be, how can I help? And so for everybody else that don't know you and haven't had those amazing conversations, can you give us a little background? Where you're from. I know you're in Paris, but you're a dub. Your background and why you were so interested in this area.
Thank you. What wonderful words, Mary. Thank you so much. So I am Irish and half Spanish, even though my name doesn't sound like either. So I'm married to a Frenchie whose father's from Madagascar. So that just gets you started. I am extremely global, and I've been living in Paris for the last 25 years. I'm married to a pilot. I get to travel around, and I have two wonderful teenage children who are feminists just like me and like my cushion behind me. So I'm absolutely on a mission to help make this world a better place for women in particular and women in business. And my background is I've done a lot of management consulting, corporate sales, and pitching was part of my job. I was selling to big corporates and I was winning multi-million-dollar accounts. And what happened was I turned 40. When I turned 40, I kind of got the light came down from above and said to me, okay, Anne, you've got to do what you really love. What is it you really love and want to do? And I knew then that my real love was to help women and women entrepreneurs in particular, to help women in business. And the reason I set up Global Invest Her, which is a global platform and community to help early stage women entrepreneurs like a lot of you get ready for funding. So we demystify that whole funding journey, and we help give you confidence and build up your confidence because you already have it and you're fantastic. You just need to know, what's this funding game? How do you play it? Who are the actors? And how to navigate all of that. And I must say a huge shout out as well to Mary McKenna, who's been an ardent supporter all the way along with Global Invest Her over many years, and Mary Carty, all the wonderful ladies you have here with us who are organising Awaken. We've been working together for a long time. So really, Mary, I want to help more women entrepreneurs get funded. I went to an event in 2012. I was in the audience and I asked the woman entrepreneur what her biggest challenge was, and she said access to funding. So first I got curious. I started reading up about it, and when I learned that there was a $1.7 trillion gap in the level of funding raised by women versus men, that made my stomach churn. At the time, it was like 300 billion. And since then, it's moved to 1.7 trillion. And so I want to help do something about it. Like you said, I just don't sit by. I want to do something about that.
So you've recently launched a really interesting campaign. And I hear that President Macron was part of the launch of this. So your campaign is to get 1 million women invested by 2030. So can you tell us, how can we get involved?
So really, we have to change things, because we know that if we don't change anything, the World Economic Forum says it's going to take us over 230 years for us to get to gender equality in the economy. Now, none of us here are going to be around for that. So we have to work for now to set up things for the future. So in early March, I was very lucky to be invited to a private lunch with several change makers with President Macron. And that's when I introduced 1 Million Invest Hers. So 1 Million Invest Hers is a campaign all about saying we want to help 1 million women entrepreneurs get funded by 2030. And how do we do that? We do that by working together as a triangle. So at the top of that triangle are the women entrepreneurs. It's you ladies. You are an Invest Her. You are a woman entrepreneur who's investing your time, your money, your energy to solve a problem that's worth solving for a lot of people. And the two other groups at the bottom of this triangle are the investors. So everything we know about that word investor, so people who are going to put money into the company. And also the other side are our partners, and our partners are consumers. They are ecosystem partners or accelerators. And what I want to do with this campaign is to bring all of those three parts of the triangle together, the whole ecosystem together, to say, together, we can actually change things. So how can we get involved? We can get involved. You can get involved in different ways. If you're a woman entrepreneur, I want you to sign up onto the platform. You're going to have all the information. I've sent it to Mary afterwards, and she's going to send it to you. So what we've done is we have a global community with fantastic women entrepreneurs around the world, and it's only focused on funding. But this week, and this is part of our 1 Million Invest Hers initiative, we have launched the Invest Her directory. And what's that? So this is the first global directory for women-owned businesses around the world that really focuses on getting your attention to your business from both consumers, so potential customers now, and investors, so potential investors afterwards. So the way that you can get involved is keep doing what you're doing, keep feeling brilliant, and join the community. And as you join the community, you'll find out we have different membership packages, but one way is you join the community and you join the directory. So you you put up your company profile on the directory so that you can be seen, and we'll be putting a lot of resources around getting eyeballs on that directory to make sure that you're seen by potential investors as well as consumers for your products.
That's really cool, Anne. 1 million by 2030. Yeah, we need that to happen. We can't wait 230 years. We certainly have to move a hell of a lot faster. When we were putting this event together, we asked people who registered to put up their questions, the things that was interesting or that they wanted to know. And I think this is a really good question, and many people in the audience here are thinking around these lines. Lots of us bootstrap our companies in the early days. So when you're bootstrapping your company, how do you know when it's the right time to go out and source financing? Have you any tips around that, Anne?
It's a really good question, and I would say it depends on the industry that you're serving, because depending on the industry you're in and the type of product or service that you're creating, you will need more or less money and more or less faster, if that makes sense. So what I would say is, when you're bootstrapping, if you can bootstrap for as long as possible, that's fantastic, as long as you're not down to your last few pennies. Okay, I would always say, try not to be desperate looking for money when you're out on the funding trail. That would be my first tip. The best time looking for funding is when you've already got some of that magic product market fit, meaning you already have a product or service that people are willing to pay for and are starting to pay for it. Or if you have a freemium model where you're not actually charging people, you can already prove to potential investors that you have traction, meaning that you have monthly users that are going up, your churn rate is not changing, so the people are staying, yet you're keeping them in your product or service. So I'd say, first thing is, don't go looking for money when you're desperate. Because, of course, then the power in that conversation, in that negotiation, is more on the investor side. The second thing I would say is, be mindful that it does take time to raise money, and even more time now during COVID-19, this pandemic. So, normally it would take anything from 3 to 6 months to more, depending on how much money you're raising to get that money. So I'd say, if you're going to start looking for funding, start reaching out and making the connection, start building relationships with potential investors and ask them for advice. Don't go straight asking for money until you're ready. So make sure that you're ready.
Okay, so the big tip there then is make sure you have a level of product market fit. Make sure that you have product that people want, and don't go looking for money when you are absolutely desperate.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too, which is really important there, is around making sure you have a network and that you know something about these people, that you don't hit them cold. So you have some level of, you're really strong in that, Anne, around building networks and getting people to understand you and to build that long-term relationship. Have you any more tips around that, particularly with funders?
I would say, like with anything, when you're building your network, it's about people. Fundraising is really down to relationships, and it's really down to people. And actually, that's something that we women are fantastic at. It's just that this is an old boys club that has kind of created these rules for many years. So I would say that when you want to build relationships with investors, the first thing is do your homework. Pay them the respect of actually checking out who they are and whether they actually do invest in your sector or your stage and or geography. If they don't already invest in your sector or stage, you need to be careful and say, should I be wasting that person's time as well as my own? Am I talking to the right person? So I think the first thing is you really need to do your homework. And I would say ask for warm introduction. I know Mary would say this. I mean, you need to make sure that if you know another founder who already knows that investor, or you know another investor who can introduce you, that's the very best way to start building the relationship. Get someone else who they trust.
Yes.
To introduce you. So I'd say build that relationship early on. And like in any relationship, I would say give first. If you have some industry knowledge that could be useful and interesting to the investor, share it, because that's part of their leverage. Investors go on and get kudos in their network and can sniff out the right deals thanks to sharing of knowledge. So if you have some really good industry knowledge that you can share, that's, I would say, is a good way in as well. But really it is do your homework.
Absolutely. Always do your homework, definitely. I suppose, thinking back, looking at your company, right? Is there any one thing you do differently now, knowing what you know?
Yes, I would love to have had a technical co-founder early on. So I'm a solo non-tech founder. So, I made plenty of mistakes and burned quite a bit of money and lost time working on technical solutions that weren't adapted, or I was too early. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what I didn't know technically, and therefore burnt some money and mainly time. So I would have wished I had a tech co-founder with me. And I would say, if you can have a co-founder, definitely have one. It's not that I'm awful and nobody wants to be with me. It's turned out to be the way it is. So I would suggest that too. If I could go back, I would have done this with a co-founder, and preferably a technical co-founder, or being able to bring in some technical CTO in early.
Right. Okay. Bring in that expertise earlier. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I have got one final question for you. So, I would like to hear your 3 top tips. Okay. 2 need to be absolutes, what you absolutely should do when you go out on a funding journey. And the other one is an absolute caution, warning, do not do one other thing. Okay. Okay.
So I'd say the top 2 of what you absolutely should do is, number 1, I've said it already, do your homework. Do not approach any investor without having thoroughly researched them and made sure that they could be a potential fit for you, that you fit their investment thesis. So that's the first thing. Really do your homework and ask for feedback from CEOs of the portfolio companies they've already invested in, or from other investors who know them very well. And prepare. So part of doing your homework is asking questions to that investor. Make sure that they actually have active money that they can invest if they're an angel investor or in a fund. See how much money they where they are in their fund cycle. So I'd say do your homework. That's very, very important when it comes to the investor. And the second thing I would say is make sure you're ready, meaning in this funding game, you have to have a certain number of documents and things ready before you go out on the trail. So you need to have a pitch deck. You need to have like a concise pitch deck that tells your story of why you set up that company and what kind of a business opportunity you represent. This is not a pitch about how beautiful your features are, how wonderful your product is. That's part of it, but it's about the investment opportunity. So make sure that you follow the kind of standard rules as to what needs to go into a pitch and the information that the investor is looking for. They will need your pitch deck that's concise, no more than 15 slides, please, like 12 to 15 maximum, and make sure it looks really good. And get feedback, a lot of feedback on it. And part of that, of having your documents ready, is also having a very good executive summary. Spend time on that, the one pager or, you know, an A4 front and back. So get your documents ready. That's part of a very important tip, because if you don't, you kind of waste the opportunity of making a very good impression, and also you'll save more time. You get down to the real conversations once you've done that pre-work seriously. So they would be my two very important do's.
You're also taken more seriously, right, Anne, as well, when that work is done and it's clear?
Of course, because it's like a sine qua non. If you haven't done it, you won't be taken seriously. And listen, we have enough unconscious biases against us as female founders or diverse founders. So you want to eliminate any possible excuse for them not to take this. So I would say the no-no is that you don't believe in yourself. It's kind of a turning it around. It is like you know, please don't lack confidence in yourself. All right, that's a huge no-no. And part of that, I would say, is the big no-no, actually. It's probably this one's better. Do not take the feedback you get from investors personally. That's a big no-no. It happens very often that many female founders may take the feedback personally. And I've just seen it time and time again. I can't just give one no-no. I would say that one is like, believe in yourself. I would say, believe in yourself, think big. And my third one is part of that. I always say is ask for more money. Make sure you don't under ask.
Ask for
That's a big no-no. Ask for all the money and make sure you ask for at least 18 to 24 months runway if possible. They're the mega tips.
Excellent. And that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us today. And also, Anne has really kindly given us a lot of documentation and all sorts of resources, and we will share them with the group after this event. So thank you so much for being so generous. And Mary and Joyita will have the next conversation.
Those of you that don't already know her, Joyita Das is CEO and co-founder of London-based data science company Guyana. She has an MBA from Oxford University, and before that a degree in electrical and electronic engineering. Joyita's CV spans technology, social entrepreneurship, loads of volunteering. She's got more awards than you can shake a stick at. She's raised over $6 million for her business to date. And she's also one of my friends. So I'm really, really pleased to have her with us here this evening. And I'm sure that you are too, and that you want to hear more from her and less from me. So I'm going to crack on here with a few questions. So welcome, Joyita. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mary.
It's lovely to see you. So as I just mentioned in the introduction, your CV covers a lot of ground and a real broad church. And you already do have a couple of exits under your belt. Am I right about that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So my first question, I suppose, is has this breadth of past experience helped you progress things with your most recent company?
Yeah, definitely. Probably not directly due to the exact training I might have received in each one of those roles and hats, but the overall aptitude to be flexible, to learn new things, and to develop, different sides of my personality are all the tools that you need to be an entrepreneur, I suppose.
And you were a full-blown techie before you were an entrepreneur. Just going back to what Anne was saying there about really wishing that she had a technical co-founder. Your own background is very technical. And you've worked, already you've worked all over the world. So at what point in your career did you first know that you were going to start your own business? And how long after that thought was it before you actually started something?
Yeah, it's crazy. I actually never thought I'll be an entrepreneur. I loved being a techie. I loved making tech. I still sleep, breathe, eat tech, weekends, weekdays, holidays. This is all I do. So I never actually thought that I will stop being a techie and cross over to the dark side, the business side, as we used to call it back then. It just so happened that it was a natural, organic transition. I love building things that add value. And at some point in my tech career, I started building things that did not exist. So it naturally meant that I step out from the role of an engineer to a creator. But I still actually didn't know that I would start calling myself an entrepreneur. My entire family is very STEM. So I remember telling my mom that I'm now going to have a business. And she said, "What do you mean? Stop doing science? What's that?" So I actually had no idea that I'm going to do something else. It's just a natural transition. I just like creating things that add value, and it just meant being an entrepreneur.
And so, you know, we both know each other from being in and around these sort of circles at Oxford. How useful has it been for you to have the big sort of Oxford name on your CV? Is it worth the money? Go on, tell us, is it worth it for people that might be thinking that they need to get a bit of glitz on their CVs?
So much vested interest because I teach there now. So
I saw that.
So I teach on weekends at the business school. So I'll tell you as it is, where it didn't add value and where it did. Where it did add value is it certainly connected me to a broader network of extremely capable individuals. And because my company is deep tech, I needed access to AI scientists and data scientists. And Oxford does have a state-of-the-art STEM department, and that was great. My co-founder is from Oxford, and most of the data scientists I recruited were inside the university. My first seed funder was a classmate in my MBA who asked me, "Why do you never do any classes? Why are you always in the math department?" And I said, "I'm building a company." And he said, "My father has a family fund." So that's my first seed funding. So in terms of the value of exposure and network, of course, it's worth every penny. In terms of exactly what you learned there, it depends on what you do. So I had a very tech background, so quants and analytics weren't very difficult for me. I was looking to pick up on the business side more. Which probably the MBA definitely does, but more for people who are getting into consulting and things like that. Entrepreneurship, as you know, is not something you can really teach in a class. You have to go out and do it. My cousin once said, "You can't learn swimming by correspondence." And I think entrepreneurship is one of those things.
Yeah, although you can improve your swimming stroke through YouTube, because I can guarantee that that's true.
Exactly.
So, and also welcome. I can see quite a few familiar faces from Oxford that are on the call here tonight. So welcome everyone. It's great to see you. So Joyita, we're gonna cut to the real thrust of our conversation here. You know, you've raised over $6 million to date, and you have got some big dogs amongst your investors. So, the floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about that journey, please.
Yeah. So I guess the key points that I can tell you from that journey is some of it happened accidentally, but a lot by design. And I found by and large, to Anne's point, when you're not planned and when you're not exactly sure about how you're going to approach investors and how you're going to design your fundraising journey, it happens by accident. So I think mostly people have this idea that I'm going to hit 100 different brick walls and one of them will stick and then I'll do the next one, which are all true. You have to go by volume, but there still needs to be a plan and a structure. Otherwise, you end up with an extremely unstructured, accidental company. So I learned that very early in the first 1 million funding itself, that I now need to have a plan of what type of funds and people will actually add value that I need to get in. How much of them will be angel investors? How much of my cap table should be fragmented? How much dilution should I be accepting? More importantly, what are the benchmarks? This year, how many tech companies in UK got funded? So get a subscription to Crunchbase, to AngelList, download them, go through your Excel, be on top of the data. Because let's face it, women founders will face the glass ceiling sooner or later. That bias will come up. And data helps you overcome bias without getting emotional. You can't possibly say, why is your entire portfolio full of men who don't generate revenue, but you won't fund me? Instead, you can say, how is it that the median value of revenue for this particular sector is so and so, and I meet that, can I have a meeting? If you use data, it's a bit more professional. And so doing your homework can be really helpful. That helped me raise the next couple of million. We did make a few mistakes, like get a lot more passive money than we should have. So family funds and angels who actually add very, very little value, almost nothing. In a way, they take away value. So I learned from my journey that early on, recognizing what you don't have in the company. And
Joyita, one of the audience questions is actually about this point. So rather than me wait to the end, I'm going to chip in here and ask you now as you're going through. So one of the questions was, any do's or don'ts re tidying up your cap table before you go to raise investment, which is what I think you're talking about just then.
Yeah, definitely. Multiple things. So like I was on the point, continuing on that, figuring out what type of people that you need. You have to remember that when you get early stage investors, especially angels, they are an extension of your team. They can bring tremendous value. So you can decide what type you want. Do you want someone who's from X advertising because your company is e-com? Do you want somebody who's from the fashion industry because you make textiles? These people can open doors for you, help you create strategies, help you create operations. So know what you want. The second thing about actual tidying, how do you really actually tidy up the cap table if it isn't? So it's certainly possible to do secondary sales. If you don't know what that means, it means you can 3 to 5 years into the company start looking at buying out early stage investors. But I don't know how many of you are at an advanced stage, but that's possible. It depends upon tax breaks like EIS, etc. The second thing you can do for tidying up cap tables is there are legal mechanisms available, like nominee structures, etc., that crowdfunding people use, where you have votes concentrated with, the whole collection instead of every single person. But anyway, rather than going that route, I would say be really conscious right from the beginning. Don't just go out and start fundraising without thinking like, who's going to fund me? That's all I care about. Think about it consciously. Who do I want? How many? What will be their ticket sizes? And therefore, how will my cap table look like?
So can you tell us a little bit about how you did that in terms of determining who it was you wanted and how you went and got them?
So first stage, I clearly knew that the one thing I and David, my co-founder, lacked is we both built startups in the tech sector before, but our first product was very property focused and we didn't know that sector well. So we started looking for angel investors who are really good with property and construction and real estate because they opened a lot of doors for us. And we actually got funded by a pure prop tech VC for our first 1 million, which was really great. They provided a lot of hands-on knowledge. Also, the second thing that we went about doing is, we basically have this discussion within the team with the key investor and the execs where we sit and discuss in the next 2 years, what is it we would like to have in the company? And how do we align everything to that? Not just operations and recruitment, but even investors. What sort of investors will do that for you? And so that's kind of how we went about.
Okay. And then in terms of reaching out to the people that you identified, how did you do that?
Yeah, to Anne's point, actually, cold emails just go in a big black hole. they just never. I think it really helped to do my homework, to look at the investors and see what type of people they actually invest in. Then you have a better chance, even if you cold reach out, if you're within their thesis at all. Let's say a fund only invests in Germany and you're based out of Belfast and you're reaching out. It's highly unlikely they'll make an exception for you out of their mandate. So don't bother. So
it's not even worth wasting the time on that, really, is it?
Absolutely. So do that. That's the only time when cold approach has worked, when I was highly targeting the people who I knew were looking for deep tech in seed stage of a particular ticket size. But 90% of the cases, cold approach did not work other than those. I think that it really helps to get introductions from warm networks. The third thing that really helped is, associates in VCs and large angel syndicates, they try to build up a pipeline all the time. They reach out to people and they take calls and they keep you engaged. You need to get into their radar as well. So relevant speaking engagements, being at the right industry forums and getting a platform there gets you into their radar. And then the associates of those funds will actually engage with you and keep you in their pipeline. And when you're ready, you can get back to them. The one thing I'll mention about the fundraising journey that I think is highly underrated and not mentioned most of the time is we're so focused on getting the fund and the term sheet and closing the money. We actually forget two things that come afterwards. One is negotiating the term sheet and getting the right value at the right deal, not getting pushed back, especially if you're a women founder or a minority. And the second thing is how to handle refusals. It's like any sales. You probably won't get funding right away many a times, but you can get it in future. Lots of people can't handle refusals very well, and they either respond very emotionally or with a great explanation of why what you said is not true. Look, if someone's already gone through their IC or their main decision making, they're not going to have it once again for you. So might as well be dignified, step back, take the refusal in a very decent way, and create a relationship. You can get funding in future. At the very least, they could refer to someone else. Sometimes it isn't you, it's the fund's mandate. And so I advise a lot of deep tech funds on investment now. Sometimes it's the mandate. If we have over-indexed in a particular category in UK, even if you're great, this year we may not be able to invest. So don't take everything personally. It may be the fund, it may be you, who knows. If they have said no and provided enough reasoning, no need to over-explain, over-push and be emotional. Thank you. It was great to engage with you. I hope we get the chance to work in future. The same way you would respond to an employer turning down an interview. Just be very professional about the refusal. That helped me a lot. There were lots of refusals in the pre-seed round that converted to the seed because I kept in touch.
Oh, that's interesting. So people that you engaged with early doors who said no at the beginning, later invested and came back later.
Yeah. And the most hated sentence, actually, I turned it into a big weapon. You know, you're too early for us. I should have a t-shirt that says, you're too early for us. I actually started predicting it. 10 minutes into a meeting, I would WhatsApp my co-founder. He's about to say, you're too early for us. Yeah. I mean, 80% of his fund is pre-revenue products run entirely by men. But we are too early for him after $1 million in revenue. I knew that. So the good thing about that is you can then ask, then what is your cutoff? I'm too early. So when would I not be early? Yeah, blah, 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 blah. You hit that in your next round. Now he can't say no because he actually objectively told you what he needed.
Yeah, I mean, I see this from the other side because I'm an angel investor. So the thing about people approaching you with stuff that you don't invest in places that you don't invest in, and in things that you're clearly not interested in is, I always find it unbelievable that people bother to waste their time. So, you know, as a founder, when you're starting out on that fundraising journey, how much of your time should you mentally allocate to that process? Because from what you've just described, it's pretty all consuming.
Yeah, so there is a best practice and there is a reality. The best practice is you should never be overconsumed and you should also think about your business. But the reality is, you know, when you fundraise for the first time, you go crazy. That's really all that's going on in your brain, and the business suffers. And that's where I would say is the role of a co-founder or advisor or senior friends in the industry, mentors who keep you balanced. Because at no point should your business suffer because you're going out fundraising. Then you kind of lost the plot. And it almost inevitably happens the first 1 or 2 times that you go out to do it because you're not used to handling that capacity. Make a schedule, like literally personal schedule of how much time you're going to spend each day, each week. And it's like mobile phone. You try to control yourself. Of course, there'll be a time when you need to dive into it 80%, but plan. So I'm currently in the process of raising a big round, and I have a plan on which months I'll be doing warm intros, warm pitches, heavy discussions. And if it goes out of hand, I check with myself that is this fund likely to do it? So another tip to keep yourself in check is to do this thing. If you find someone's taking a really long time, stringing you along for months, it's usually absolutely perfect. Just like a relationship, it's perfectly fine. Just ask, what is it that would take for you to take the final step? Hear the answer. Mm-hmm. Usually you are preempting a decision. If they were not going to do it, they're wasting your time and you're spending 80% of your bandwidth pleasing them. They'll actually tell you at that point, we weren't going to do it anyway. But if they're going to do it, they will actually tell you exactly why they're waiting. We are waiting for you to hit blah, blah product market fit. And I'm waiting for last 2 months to see that. At least you got an objective answer. You know where you're working towards. So if you find that a lot of your time is going in fundraising, start asking the people you're engaging with, what can I do to make this shorter? What are you looking for?
Yeah. So a real quick question here, Joyita. Celebrity investors, worth pursuing or not?
No, no brand, even, as we just discussed.
Can we chase after Bono and Biz, people like that? Or
Yeah,
do we
no,
just
nothing
go with...
is worth it unless they really add value for who they are, regardless of the brand. So Biz has been amazing. He literally single-handedly saved the company from disaster many times because of his experience with Twitter and Medium. I mean, he's co-founded those two big companies, makes him a big brand. But what actually people don't know is he's invested in every good startup that's in deep tech, from, Intercom to basically Pinterest, you name it. So his experience...
He's a very warm, very useful person as well, actually, and he's willing to put his time in.
So I did actually check with his portfolio. I did speak to those CEOs. It's not the brand. Like, does he really add value? And you'll be surprised.
That's another good point. Checking in with other people that the investor has invested in previously to find out if it was worth it.
100%. People do it to me all the time now. They reach out to me and say, is it great to have Biz on my cap table or somebody else? They do that. So absolutely do that. Nobody is worth their brand. In the end, it has to be your work. But check if the brand actually brings value.
And the last question, I'm going to go with the same question that Mary Carty asked Anne. Give us 3 top tips for any founders that are out there about to start fundraising. So 2 definite do's and 1 definite don't.
Okay, well, 2 definite do's. 1, don't underestimate the power of analysis. It gives you confidence in your discussions and your term sheet negotiation. So look at data from Crunchlist, get a subscription to PageBook, be in the know of fundraising. What are the median benchmarks? And if you're not comfortable with quantitative analysis, get your co-founder, CFO, somebody to do it. But know the numbers. If someone tells you, I'll value you for $750K, is that a normal thing or not? You should know. So definitely look at data. There's just no other way to make unbiased decisions. Second thing, I guess you've heard this from Anne as well and from everyone else, but I'll say it again. It takes way longer. Sometimes the term sheet falls apart. Sometimes the term sheet is here and then the person isn't able to invest and they take it back. All of those things will happen. So I guess what I'm trying to say is in the early stages, maybe think more like being a camel than a unicorn. So just survive, be really cheap. I was like absolutely crazy about cash management, every pound. So be super stingy until you know that you have enough time, even if this falls through. That's really important. Cash management while you fundraise, even when you have a term sheet, don't go cocky and hire 5 people because this money is inevitably going to come. Until the cash is in the bank for 24 hours, it's not done. So don't spend, don't project into future, don't take credits. Like, just don't do that. So those are the 2 things while you fundraise. The third one I'd say is invest in creating relationships with the type of investors you'd like to have. It takes a long time to create trust. It's a big deal. I mean, when we buy a television, we do so much research. This is somebody putting in so much money in a company that hasn't proved any potential. Whether it's theirs or someone else's, they're answerable. So they have to trust you as a human, not just as an entrepreneur. So create a relationship. Even if they say no a couple of times or they're not easy to reach or being pricey, they have stuff to do. So just be in touch, create a relationship. Don't make it about a transaction right away. Hi, I just want money from you. This is all I want. You just get to know them. I would like advice from you. Do you think you would ever invest in me? What other events are you doing? It really helps to do that. Those are my 3 do's. Sorry, you asked for 1 don't. The one particular don't that I would ask not to do is, this is a bit controversial, but I think a lot of, there's a lot of data on inclusion right now. Like everything's changing. Women founders are getting funded so much. And there's so many women in the funds. All they're doing is investing in women and things like that. Those are not entirely true. As very famously said by Yuval Noah Harari, we always overestimate what's going to happen in 6 months and underestimate what's going to happen in 10 years. So most likely the level of change you've anticipated hasn't actually happened. It's all PR and hype. Women founders still struggle. It's not going to show on the surface. Everybody will take the meetings, but it works at a different level subconsciously. So my don't to you is don't over expect. Things have changed a lot, so it's going to be better. We definitely still have to overcompensate and work a bit harder. Is that fair? Probably not, but it's my job to tell you the practical reality. So that's what I will say.
Some great advice there, folks. Thank you so much, Joyita. And I would like to ask Anne and Joyita to remain with us, because I'm going to pass over now to Denise. And Denise has been harvesting our audience questions. So ladies, get ready for a bit of quick fire question and answers here. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Thank you both, Joyce and Anne. It's wonderful to be with you tonight, and so many great attendance, and lovely to see so many familiar faces and new faces for our inaugural event tonight. Joyce, one of the questions that came through is, you talked about obviously strategic investors and passive investors, and obviously navigating that world. But one of the questions from Carleen Little is, how do you decide on how much equity to give away for those particular types of different investors?
Yeah, so this is like the standard question of how much equity do I give away, period, strategic or not. And I think, again, for me, honestly, because I wasn't from a very finance background or hadn't worked in any of these things, I was actually new to UK. I just, moved here in 2014. So I actually didn't know anything. The thing that gave me confidence, again, is data. I looked at data and found out how much companies do get diluted at this stage. And on the basis of that, I decided how much equity I should give away and how much would be a very rare case, a corner case that I haven't seen anywhere in the Crunchbase data, and how much would be an average case and how much would be a good scenario. And try to then see, what sort of valuations would a pre-seed or a seed company get, or a Series A, and walked it backwards to that. Normally, whoever you're using for financial advice, whether it's you or someone else, if you're raising in excess of $500,000, take a little bit of advice regardless. They should also be able to help you navigate. And if you get a really good strategic investor right up front, like an advisor, investor, mentor type of person, they will be able to help you figure that out, because they're on your team. If you get more diluted, they get more diluted. You see, you're tied to the hip. So they will help you.
Okay, great. And another question that's come through, that is a no-code product investable, or is that just a current trend? So a non-tech.
That's really hard to say. Everything is a trend. A fad becomes a trend, and a trend becomes an IPO. So it's hard to say what is a trend, what is a fad. I guess I have no idea. But all I can say is you can use a lot of buzzwords to get into what you want to. So I got into AI 10 years ago when it wasn't even a thing. And we didn't even know that you could flout it in people's faces and get funds. But it was a real thing. And eventually it worked out very well for us because it was. So I guess what matters isn't if the word is investable or not. Eventually people see through it in your pitches and your due diligence. What you're building, does it really add value? You can call what you want. That's marketing. Every business does it. You call it AI, no code, NLP, no one cares. That's marketing. You do what it takes. But do you yourself know what value you're adding? What does your product really do? If it doesn't really add value, it doesn't matter how much fluff we built up. It's hard to be investable. It's hard to be profitable. So no code or not, my standard answer would be just think about, do you really add value in any way?
Okay, great. And Joy, as you threw out your interview there with Mary, you'd mentioned several places where you start the research piece and start to look for data, Crunchbase being one. Are there any others that you would recommend that our female founders go towards?
So there's lots of reports that come out each year on investment. Diversity VC does one on diversity. MST UK does one on SMEs. And I think few others are coming out. Everybody wants to now join the women founder reporting. So there's lots of industry reports. But like I said, I think I'm not really sure how much of those reports really reflect the reality. We tend to have a recency bias where everything that happened in the last 6 months looks huge to us. So I would take everything with a pinch of salt, but they're all available. The best data to look at is raw data. If you have raw investment data, you make your own sense of the trends or take help from your CFO to understand it.
Okay, great. And do you surround yourself with mentors that are not associated with your business?
Absolutely, 100% at all times. I think entrepreneurship is a team sport more than people think. It's not just the team that helps you and the investors that sit in your board who all have directly vested interests like you. It's also many other people in the industry who've done things, who've failed at things, who're good at other things. You can have a commercial relationship with them. You can have a friendship with them. It doesn't matter. Well, we need to be surrounded by people who can provide advice in many different directions. Sometimes even moral advice, sometimes even confidence, you never know. So 100%, I think I have an ecosystem that I built up over the years, but it's a bit of a give and take. You can't just take. You have to give back. What do you add value to those networks? Do you bring something to them? Do you ever help them? Do you recommend them? Do you refer them? Because if you don't do those things, then it's highly unlikely that those networks will exist for a long time. But I definitely have a lot of mentors and advisors, and I actually almost entirely credit them for having come so far.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Joyita. Pleasure. I've got some more questions that have been directed at Anne, so we'll just move across to Anne. Good evening, Anne. How is Paris today? All good?
It is sweltery and sunny outside. So yes, I don't want to make you all jealous wherever you are, but we're having a lovely hot spell.
Great. Obviously, you both, yourself and Joyce, have talked about the research that needs to be done around approaching investors and how to go about that, and the importance of data and getting a clear view of that. On the platform, Anne, that you've developed with Global Investor, I see you've been sharing some of the resources that are on the platform, but can you tell me a little bit more about what the resources are on the platform to support that, just so that everybody knows?
Absolutely. So we have loads of different resources. So the two links that I've shared with you, there's one that's like a general resources page, and you'll see there's quite a few different things on that page. So we have the list of, like, a curated list of books that you should read if you're really interested in going deeply into this, plus the list of investor blogs. That's also a really good resource, is actually to read the investor blogs. And I have actually split it up between male investor blogs and female investor blogs, because that's important too. So I would say do check out, investors very often tweet, they will have a blog, they comment on things, and that's a very good way to get a feel for what they're looking for, what they're investing in, and their view on trends. So I would suggest to have a look there. Also, on the community, if you want to kind of go really deep down, there is one of the links I shared with you. I've created a whole page of investor databases. So from the big generic ones down to country by country, as far as possible, what I've been able to find. So if all you need to do is give your email, it's free. I want to make sure. So it's just so that you can then join our list. So I've put that link in as well. And then we also have on our community, every single day I'm adding curated information about funds, new funds that are being created that are specifically targeting women, or just new funds who have, new resources out there. Also pitch competition, new accelerators from around the world. Everything, all the information we share on the community is geared to funding, and from a female angle as much as possible. So I would say when you join the community, and Mary, the two Marys and Sinead are members already, you'll see it's all organized, because I've moved it off a Facebook group into a new platform, which is fabulous because you can actually go in by topic. So whichever you're interested in, pitching resources, new funds, learning about investors. So we have a whole section which is like, I call it investor land. So it's literally understanding what investors are doing, saying. And so we regularly do free webinars and free podcasts. So we also have, I'll type it in here, investorpodcast.com. So that's a free podcast where I interview investors and where I interview female founders who have gotten money. And Joyita, Mary introduced me to you, and I know I've reached out to you, and I absolutely want to have you on as a guest to share your knowledge, because you're just so awesome. So we definitely need to have your voice. So that's a great resource. So we currently have 14 podcasts there, and the most recent one I did 2 weeks ago was with Beji Yang from 500 Startups, and she's in charge of the program globally. She's managing director for the fund, and she also is in charge of a training course for more people to become VC. So on the platform, you have in the community loads of everyday updates. If you just want to kind of go and test things out, check the links I've shared for loads of free resources. You've got the Investor Podcast. And then if you want to go deep down, we have some investor masterclasses on Investor Academy. And all of that I've shared in the document, the PDF I've shared with Mary. I won't overwhelm you with loads of it. Basically, just to say, we've curated and created really fantastic funding resources and information, all specifically for female founders. And we've been doing this since 2013, before it was even sexy. So there you go.
Well, it's certainly sexy now, with the mission to get as many female founders funded as we can. I think everybody that's attending this webinar is hopeful that it won't take as long as 230 years to be able to achieve that. So from both of your perspectives, Joyce and Anne, and I know that everybody has asked the question of the one top tip, but for me, there's a huge amount around the investment funding and somebody has just put it in the chat that we've removed some of the jargon from the agenda and from the investment piece. Where, in your opinion, from both of your perspectives, how do you get your head around the jargon? I know people have mentioned cap tables and term sheets, and everybody's at a very varying stages across the investment journey. But where do you get your head around those small nuggets that are useful when you are having those investor conversations or doing the early reach out? Where's the place to start?
I would say Medium, because there's a lot of great investors and founders who have written kind of short mini directories or not directories, dictionaries of the keywords. I'd say that's a great place to go because people share a lot of resources there. So I would check out on Medium. And because the thing is, it's true, when you start in this world, I would say you need to read, like start reading lots of articles and just start looking up stuff. But there are specific books that literally break it down. And that's why I shared our must reads in the list of the resources page. We have a whole section on must reads because it's a whole language. I mean, as I say, this is a funding game. It has its rules, it has its players, and it has its own language. So I would say to speed things up, you want to go really fast. Yes, you can Google a few Medium things, but I would say go to a founder who's already raised money and just literally ask them, okay, give me a quick crash course. And I would love to do that actually for you. I'd love to set up a webinar, just crash course. What do all these bloody words mean? And let's just start demystifying that. I'd be very happy to do that. So if that's something you're interested in, just say yes in the chat box. And I'll know that means we need to do it, and we'll do it. And I mean, when I say do it, we'll do it next week if you want it. We'll do it. Okay, we're going to demystify. Okay, yes, we're going to do it. Yes. All right, I'll go back to Mary and the ladies to say, right, but I will definitely do it and share with you. Because we need to demystify this stuff. Listen, if the guys could do it, we can bloody well do it. Who manages the finances at home?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know more.
And Joyce, obviously you're very comfortable with data, obviously from, being in the industry that you...
Joyita is currently muted, so can someone please unmute her for me? Thank you.
Sorry.
So yeah, I actually would like to add to that point. I really agree with that on that. One thing I would say is the best way to learn Spanish is to go to Spain for a week. Yeah. So if you want to get jargon right, I think it's really important to immerse yourself in people who use that jargon. So get into founder networks, whether they're WhatsApp groups or Eventbrites or meetups or things like what Mary's doing right now. And
investor community.
Absolutely. Follow the right Twitter accounts and do the things on Medium. Get embedded, and you'll pick up the words really fast, far better than learning them in a dictionary. It's anyways a very hands-on thing. That's what entrepreneurship is. So immerse yourself, surround yourself with other co-founders. Even if you're shy, I'm a closet introvert, so I really struggle to be this extrovert that I am today. But it helped to immerse myself in communities, and it was easy to pick up the words because they were saying it all around me.
Super. And you won't be the first or only, I would say. Listen, how many founders that have I interviewed? Because I've interviewed hundreds of founders, and they'd say, I would be in a meeting and an investor would ask me something and I wouldn't know what it meant. As soon as I got out, I'd be Googling, what the hell was that word he asked me? I don't know what it meant. We've all been there. That's why I say you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Talk to founders, male or female, who have actually raised money, exactly like Joyita, or me or whatever. Just talk to people who've done it. And they can give you a really quick rundown. It's not hard. It's like everything. You learn the vocabulary. Once you've got it, you're off to the races.
Super. Unfortunately, everybody, we have run out of time. We're very close to drawing to a close. Is there any last minute question that somebody wants to pose in the chat? Or we can pick it up with you. Obviously, Anne has shared a lot of information that we will be able to share with you and email to you. But if there's anything else that you want to put in the chat that you would like to hear from the Awaken Hub as we're going forward in our Funding Female Founders webinar series, if there's anything else that you would like us to cover over the course of the next number of months, please do let us know as well. And thank you all for joining us tonight.